Do you ever wish someone would draw you a map and give you the directions to the career of your dreams? If so, consider this podcast your GPS to a career where you feel strong, fulfilled, and passionate about your work, day in and day out. On this show, I am sharing the tools to help you advocate for your strengths, discover your passions, and learn from folks who transformed their careers for the better. My name is Joyel Crawford, your fairy god mentor, and with my 18 years of experience in HR at a Fortune 50 company and 20 years of coaching and mentoring top leaders, I am thrilled to be your guide on this career journey. Let's get started. Welcome back to Career View Mirror, where we don't just talk about careers, we hold up the mirror so you can see what's really going on. Now, if you've been here before, you already know today's guest, but this is not a repeat. This is a deeper dive. I'm joined by best-selling author, workplace thought leader, and truth teller, Minda Harts. Her newest USA Today bestseller, Talk to Me Nice, The 7 Trust Languages for a Better Workplace, is putting language to something that so many people are feeling, but haven't been able to name. Minda, welcome back to Career View Mirror.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So let's get right into it because this book feels urgent. It was just like, you know how things just come out at the right time. It just feels so urgent that this book came out at the time that it did. What are you seeing right now in the workplace that made you say, we need a whole new conversation about trust right now?
Yeah, and thank you for that. I think that it was literally probably 2022 where I started to think about trust and the erosions that happen. And, for a long time, I've been writing exclusively about women of color and how trust has been eroded in certain spaces for them. And then I started to meet different people at different companies, and no matter who they were, whether they were in Tokyo or North Dakota, they were experiencing these erosions of trust. And
Mhm.
I thought, okay, well, the more I started to hear people talk about it, I'm like, well, it's less of a trust issue and more of a communication problem. When we do have a breakdown in trust, we don't have the language to be able to identify it, right? And that's not
Mhm.
just Black women, brown women, that's white men, that's millennials, that's boomers, right? That's
Right.
everybody feels that. We may not know what it's like to walk in my shoes, but we all know when trust is present and when it's gone. And I said, okay, well, maybe if we start there on a common level, then we
Mhm.
can address some of the other issues that are taking place. But if we don't trust each other, we're never going to have sustainability in any way in our workplace relationships. And that trickles out to our romantic and platonic relationships. So
Yes.
trust is at the center of everything. And I'm like, you know what? We need to go back to the basics and we need to talk about trust.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. And I love that you were like, life doesn't just exist in the workplace. It exists outside of the four walls. And it's such a huge foundational piece of how we do business, how we just do life in general. There's just so much talk about the burnout and boundaries and leadership, but trust feels like the undercurrent. Why do you think trust is the real issue that we're not naming enough in the workplace?
I think because for so long it was kind of, I think saying that we don't trust someone or that we don't trust our leadership, when you say that out loud, it's like a dirty word. It's like a cuss word at work, right? But if you and I were having coffee or hanging out on the weekend and we talked about, oh girl, I don't trust so and so, that would be like a normal conversation. But somewhere in the workplace, we don't talk about trust in the same
Right.
way, right? And
Right.
it's like, listen, each and every one of us are going throughout our day doing things not
Mhm.
intentionally, but we're eroding people's trust and we don't even know it. And they're side eyeing us. We didn't follow through on the thing that we said.
Right.
We said one thing and did another. All these little things. We CC'd somebody on an email that probably shouldn't have been CC'd, and all of these erosions are taking place, and people are filling in the gaps, creating a
Mhm.
narrative of who they think we are. It may or may not be true, right? And nine times
Mhm.
out of 10, because we don't know how to communicate with each other, you might not feel comfortable or secure enough to tell me, you know what, Minda, you said you were going to have that paper on my desk by 5 o'clock. It's Tuesday a week later. Just want to check in, right? Like, because if I tell you I'm going to do it again, you're not going to trust me, right? And
Right.
now you're not going to consider me for projects. You're not going to consider me for promotions. And I didn't know that you were thinking you couldn't trust me, right? And I'm like, oh, we all have a trust language, but we need to understand what those are so that you can do your best work and I don't get in the way of that.
And you know what? You led me right into the next topic about these trust languages. You introduce the concept of trust languages in the book, and I love this because it gives people something tangible. You sometimes you read these books and they're like just kind of surface level and kind of concepts of ideas and things of like that, but like this is tangible. So let's break it down. Like for somebody hearing this for the first time, who's probably tic-tac typing and ordering the book right now, which is available on all platforms, bookstores nationwide and internationally. But for somebody who's like hearing this for the first time, what does it mean to have a trust language at work?
Yes. So many of your listeners and viewers have probably heard of Gary Chapman's The Five Love Languages, right? It's helped many of our relationships through and through.
Yeah.
We had a language for when we didn't feel loved, even though the person is trying their best to show us, right? And it's
Mhm.
similar in the workplace. And I thought if we have these for our romantic and platonic, then there's got to be something for the workplace, right? And
Mhm.
all of our issues, regardless of what they are, it stems from if I trust this person or not,
Mhm.
right? And I
Mhm.
thought to myself, right, like recruiting, hiring, your first 90 days, like all
Yes.
onboarding, all of these things, one-on-ones, giving and
Mhm.
receiving feedback. These are all where trust is either enhanced or eroded. And a very short story is when I was in my former life, I had this manager and he would always call me a rock star, right? You probably heard those pet names, right?
Yes. Yes. Rockstar and unicorn. Yep.
Yes, yes. Ninja warrior, like I'm all these things, right? And he would always tell me that, but I didn't feel like I could trust him. I didn't feel like he was speaking my name in the rooms that I wasn't in. I didn't feel like I was seeing anything tangible really happening outside of
Mhm.
lip service. And so I created this narrative that I didn't trust him, right? And
Mm.
which may or may not be true, right? But that was the narrative that I created. And so
Right.
with that, I was like, wait a second, Minda, okay, be a big girl, take a step back.
Mhm.
What is it that's underneath this you don't trust? Yes, it may be bad, but there's something underneath the reason why. And the more I started to pull back the layers, I found that
Mm.
he never gave me feedback. And the reason I didn't trust him was because he wasn't giving me meaningful and insightful, feedback, that consistency. And I thought, okay, what if I go and have a conversation with him and tell him? Because right now, the trust issue is creating an expectation gap that he's not
Mhm.
aware of. And if he
Mhm.
knew that I needed this language that speaks to me, could he provide that, right? Could our relationship be more trustworthy? Could it be more harmonious? And I thought to myself, we have these languages that we want people to speak to us, but they may not be aware of it, right? And so I went
Right.
and had the conversation with him and I told him, and again, I also have to say this too, is when we approach people and tell them what we need, is it going to enhance the relationship with trust or
Mhm.
erode it, right? Because I could approach it like, you tell me that I'm a rock star, I don't see the backup dancers, all the things, right?
Right, right.
But I went to him and I said, I really value after I'm done with a project when you please take time and you provide me some feedback. That's really helpful for me. Is that something that we could carve into each of our one-on-ones when we talk after I finished something? Because that really helps me. And he's like, oh, I didn't know you needed that. Right now that I know that, I can provide it, right? And so again, that was worked for me. His trust language was, oh, she's not a problem child for me. She's going to do the things. But again, we're closing this expectation gap, and it's
Mhm.
helping with the communication crisis because that's where the trust was eroded. We weren't communicating.
Yep. And communication is a cornerstone of all relationships. All relationships. You hear it all the time in romantic and platonic relationships. Same goes for the workplace. And I love that you showed your ask. I'm gonna like just a little soft promo of the book back there. So like what's one trust language that you think most misunderstood or overlooked? in the
Yeah,
workplace?
that's a great question. So for those who need to get both books in their cart right now, right? Show your ass and talk to me nice and put them both in the cart because there's 7 trust languages, but what you'll find is you have a primary trust language, a secondary trust language, and a tertiary trust language. And if you have those, then people that you work with or that you go home to, they probably have that too. And so
Mhm.
you'll find out more about those 7, but the one that I think that is like right now that's critical is the trust language of sensitivity. I feel
Mhm.
like we are not being mindful of our tone, our behaviors, and our words, and that is really a lack of empathy, right?
Yeah.
Like have I gained the right to say this joke in this meeting with this group of people, right? Have I
Right.
earned that right? Right? Or if somebody has their camera off or they're on, I don't see their green light on, do I have the right to say, "Oh, you're not working anymore, you must be in Bermuda," right? Or do I approach it with a lens of sensitivity? Oh,
Yeah.
Minda normally has her camera on in every meeting. So approaching her and assuming, why don't I approach her in the way of, "Hey,
Mhm.
Minda, I just wanted to check in with you. I noticed that the last couple of meetings your camera has been off. Is everything okay?" Instead of saying,
Mhm.
you're in Bermuda working, aren't you? Got to bring you back to the office 5 days a week so I can see you. Your red lights on." And then I feel safe, which is another security is another trust language. And I can tell you, you know what? I've actually been caregiving for my father who has dementia. And some days I have to turn the camera off because there's, and then we get to trust
Yeah.
begets trust, right?
Yes.
Different outcome.
It just feeds into each other. It's like it's kind of like building blocks,
Yep.
like not Jenga though, but like like Legos, like that click
Yes.
together. I
Mhm.
love this. I love this. Where do you see the biggest disconnect between how leaders think they're building trust and how employees are actually experiencing it?
Girl, well, where do I begin? Okay, there's a statistic that says that 50% of people, 50 to 60% of people don't trust the people they work with. That's a high number.
That's
That's over
huge.
half of us don't trust each other, right? And you're not going to get your most productivity out of the workplace if you have people anxious, worried, confused, there's too much ambiguity. And so, what does that
Mhm.
do? That impacts the bottom line, right? And
Mhm.
so, trust
Mhm.
isn't just this, let's put on our favorite matching pajamas and play our favorite Taylor Swift songs and do a trust fall, right? No, trust is also good for business because when trust is present, we have more retention, right? When
Yeah.
trust is present, we have more productivity. And so, I
Yep.
think leaders sometimes just say, "Oh, I have the title, so people automatically trust me." Right? And I think that
Mhm.
that is leads to lack of transparency, which is another trust language, that clarity and honesty. And I think that sometimes, that movie, A Few Good Men, you can't
Mhm.
handle the truth.
Can't handle the truth.
You can't handle the truth. Leaders think that people can't handle the truth, but people crave in this climate, they're craving honesty. They're
Yeah.
craving clarity. They want to know, okay, yeah, things are crazy and we see the smoke, but tell
Yeah.
us that there is smoke. You may not know why the smoke and the alarms are going off, but we just want you see what I see, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that vulnerability, I think that many leaders have been socialized not to tell people the truth, and people need that. They're human first and everything else second.
Yep. Yep. I love it. I love it. I love the fact that you are highlighting that human-centered leadership and building on the empathy and just it isn't just the title. Like when I became a manager, I was just like, I'm it. Like I'm gonna get I just wanted money, power, respect. That song by the Locksmith. I was like, that's it. Like I got it. I got the manager title and everyone's gonna that's not how it works. Like you get the promotion and I had to coach and manage my peers when I became a manager. So friends, me and my friends that I was kikiing it with, like that changed.
Yeah.
And that whole transparency piece about, just not assuming that just because I have the title, I'm going to get that respect. You have to earn it and you have to really put your humanity into it and see people as humans. For the person listening to right now or looking at this right now who's thinking, I don't feel safe, I don't feel seen, I don't feel supported, how can they begin to identify what they need without overexposing themselves? Like you were able to tap into that moment where you were like, listen, I've started this story. I've created this narrative in my brain about I can't trust this person who's calling me a rock star. How does one begin to identify what they need without kind of showing all their business? I'm putting all on Front Street.
Yeah, that's a great question, and a good way to think about it, because right now, let's be honest, we're in an economy where you can't just quit today and then
Mm-mm.
you jump into the arms of another employer. It's not it's not
No,
that simple
no, the
right
trust
now.
fall is they are not behind you in the trust fall at all. This workplace, this environment, this economy is not behind you in a trust fall right
No,
now.
no. So you owe it to yourself. And part of this is self advocacy, right? So if
Mhm.
the cool thing about the book is that there's quizzes and scripts that you can identify what your trust languages are if you don't know. And if they're and then there's ways for you to have that conversation if you're not getting it. And so here's part of it. Oftentimes we will leave a job we love, a job function, and we won't have a conversation when a conflict arises. So we'll leave and go to another job instead of having the conversation. And so I'm encouraging people to say, identify what the root of the problem is, right? Like
Mhm.
similar to I did, and have a conversation, right? It's not what you say, but how you say it. If you
Yes.
know that you need a little more follow through, maybe people aren't keeping their word as they once were. How do we have
Mhm.
a conversation to get that, right? Because again, we want to close this expectation gap. You're assuming that they know that this is an issue for you, right?
Yep.
And so, and then we get to talk about it and give people an opportunity to demonstrate to you what trust could look like if they knew that's what you needed, right? And so I think
Yeah.
that that's part of it. Let's advocate for the things that we need,
Mhm.
in a way that enhances the relationship. And I think one key thing that each and every one of us can do, even if the people that you work with or go home to, they have no idea what a trust language is, you can still say to them, hey, I want to make sure we have the best working relationship or the most harmonious relationship go
Yes.
this year. What do you need from me? Right? And they're
Yes.
going to tell you one of these seven things. They're going to be, they may not say acknowledgement, but they're going to be like, oh, when I take the trash out, I don't feel like you notice that, right? And that's going to signal to you, oh, they don't feel seen, right?
Right.
That's impacting the trust here. And so
Mhm.
again, we have to give ourselves permission to as my grandma said, tell people how to love you, baby. Like
Aw.
tell people how to show up for you. And sometimes
Yeah.
people don't have this magic ball or crystal ball to say, what is it that Minda wants? Sometimes we have to articulate that.
Yes. Oh, let's talk about the part that gets really real because trust isn't just broken, it's often felt in silence. And so, for the professional who's thinking, I've been burned before, I don't even know if it's safe to speak up. Where does courage actually come from in that moment?
It's everything. Courage is everything. One definition of courage is the ability to do something that frightens one. And it's scary to trust again, right? In all of my previous books, I talked about the traumas that I experienced in the
Mhm.
workplace. And everything that I had been through would tell you, girl, you can't trust, you in danger, girl, in every
Yeah.
space you, you walk into. But I had to do that internal work to say, I can't take this baggage of maybe some bad characters into a new space where someone is wanting to show me what trust could really look like. That trust can be a
Mhm.
noun and a verb for me, right?
Yes.
So I also have to do my internal work to say, okay, is this person's motive, intention? Are they
Mhm.
demonstrating this, or am I bringing this from a past manager, right? So
Right.
my rock star manager, if things didn't get better with him, am I now projecting that, oh, everybody's just going to show up for me that way and not give me the things I need? And so I think you have to allow people to put trust coins in for currency, right?
Yeah.
Let them demonstrate to you that, oh, okay, I can trust them. The cup is full until I see that it's not. I don't just start
Right.
with nothing in it, right? I
Right.
I give everybody the opportunity that I can trust you until I can't, right? And I think we have to do that because part of that too is if we don't have trust, then that's going to impact our well-being. And if we
Yes.
automatically have our defenses up, then we're not giving an
Yes.
opportunity for us to be our best at work and see the best that could be for our careers. And so again, that narrative, right, is so strong.
So strong. So, so strong. And it was making me think of when you change managers sometimes and you hear, girl, he doesn't do anything. Like he's like the worst manager ever. And so you're going in there with their narrative, right? Like you
Mhm,
go into the, but I always tried to, whenever I had a new manager or even a new team member, and person's like, oh,
mhm,
they're a problem child. And I was managing them. And I was like, everyone has their own preconceived narratives. You, like you said, your cup is filled with trust coins in the currency there until they give you a reason to pour it all out on the
mhm.
floor. It's so important to kind of step back from the other people's narratives and create your own from your own lived experiences. And
Yeah,
you talk so much about self advocacy. Even if you are fragile, um, and you're feeling like your reputation is at stake, what's the difference between being strategic and being silent? Like if you're like, well, I've been I feel like if I speak up, I'm gonna lose my job or whatever it is. What's the difference between being strategic and being silent?
yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because I think part of it is this, like really asking ourselves, what does good look like to us? And once we
Mm,
ask ourselves that question, then we look around the room and say, okay, who do I need to build relationships with that might be able to help? So I may not be the one to say the thing, right? But
right.
somebody I have a relationship with might be able to advance this situation and bring more trust into the room than I'm able to, right? But I think it's important, and it's one thing. This again, I ask myself whenever I try to anyway, whenever I'm about to say something or do something or send a communication out, is this going to enhance the relationship or erode it? Even
Ooh,
when I have a difference of opinion, right? And so even if I have a difference of opinion, I want to make sure I'm thinking about the end of the conversation, how I begin, like what trust language do I want to reach for when I have this
right.
difficult conversation, right? So that we
Mm,
still have trust on the track. So even if I need to, there's been an issue and I want to address it, I want to address it in a way that we still can look each other in the eye in the hallway, right? We don't have to like, oh, I see you, I'm going the other way, right? Or I don't want to come off as I'm accusing, so I'm going to root things in fact, right? So
mm,
I'm very intentional. What we're talking about is intentionality because
yes.
we can't outsource our humanity. And we
Mm,
don't want to strip anyone away of their dignity through our conversation. Right. And so I'm very intentional about how I do it, especially when I know that this could come off as a criticism, right?
mhm,
Or
mhm.
micromanagement. Like we
Yep.
really want to be intentional because we want our colleagues to have the best experience with us and
Mhm.
vice versa.
I love that. I love that. It's being aware. I like to call those check yourself before you wreck yourself moments. Like it's just that
Yes.
self-awareness before you press the send button. You're just like, is this going to enhance or erode, right? Those are
Yeah.
the two words. I love that thinking. You just gotta stop. You gotta stop and think about this.
Pause. Just
Just take
pause
a
for a
pause
second.
for the cause. Just got to do it. Now, are there any signals that someone should look for to know if a workplace is capable of rebuilding trust? Like, are there any clues like that we should kind of keep our eyes open for, or like,
Absolutely.
and then like, well, and do they give us the like? Is it like the red flag that says, "Girl, it's time to go. It's time to move out," or um, what are those clues? What are the things we need to look for?
Yes, I talk a little bit about this in the book too. Is if you're going into a company, you want to think about it as the employee journey. So from let's say you're going into a new role, and I'm sure you have plenty to say about this too, is look at how they're treating you in the interview process, right?
Yes,
Are they
all the
following
time.
up? Are they leaving you on workplace read? All of that is part of the journey, right? So how you're experiencing even before you get hired, the interview process, right?
Mhm,
I
mhm.
love it. A friend of mine recently went through a real big round of interviews, and they asked her, would you prefer if you have your interviews back to back, or would you like to spread them out over a couple of days? And I thought that was
Mm,
very thoughtful, right?
yeah.
Because they're thinking about, because it is a lot to do like interviews with like 10 people like back to back to back, and it's
Absolutely.
it's those little things, right? If that
Mhm.
matters to you, those are signals, right? Those could be a
Yes.
signal. I think the other thing is your first 90 days on a
Mhm.
job is,
Mhm.
did you get hired for one thing, now you're doing another thing, right? And so we definitely right, or your manager said this, and or your pay was this and now it's not that. Having those early conversations and how they engage with you in those conversations.
Yes.
Is it trustworthy, enhancing or eroding, right? These are all those things that are going forward. And I also think those are just some red flags, especially also when there is difference of opinion. And I think I have a section in the book where if you've been burned at a past company, think about what your trust languages are so that you can ask those
Mhm.
similar questions,
Mhm.
scenario based questions during the
Yeah.
interview process so that you can have a better understanding of how they move and
Mhm.
what's going on.
Yeah, to be
Right.
proactive about it. In
Yes.
fact, I coach my clients all the time. There's all this stuff on the internet about the best interview questions, and one of my favorites that I personally used, that gave me a lot of insight was, I see that there's a job description. I know what it takes to write a job description, being a previous hiring manager. What's not on here that you are expecting me to do?
That's good.
Like, what's not on here? Because there's not everything is on that job description that you were able to squeeze in there. So what's
Mhm.
not on there that you're expecting me to do?
Oh,
And
I love that. That's
yeah,
good. I
yeah.
want to add to that too is one of so for me, one of my trust languages is acknowledgement. I like to be seen for
Mhm,
my value for my work. So if I was in a
mhm,
situation where I didn't get recognition, often I'm going to ask those questions that are related. How do you recognize when people have done? Because that's important to me,
mhm,
right? And you're
mhm.
going to have that intel, right? You're not going to know everything, but the things that matter to you, that's where you're bringing them up, you know.
Yes, yes. And when I became a people leader and a manager for the first time, one of my mentors showed me how I like to be coached for 'em, and so I customized it to what helps me and helps me understand people. So whenever I had a new team, I would give them a how I like to be coached for 'em, and it had, how do I like to be recognized? Where do
Mhm,
I see myself going and growing in the organization? What are my, how do I like to be communicated to? Like, do I do
mhm,
text? Do I like phone? All these things helped me because then I would use that as like a script during my one-on-one conversations so that I could build that trust
I love
with
that.
my coworkers. And
Mhm,
it was such a helpful tool to have and then use, as kind of like a like little guide so that
mhm.
I knew what was best for each person because one size doesn't fit all. And I think a lot of workplaces kind of do that. They kind of assume like, oh well, I'm just gonna kind of use the same flavor of leadership with everybody.
Yep, absolutely.
What would like talking about what workplaces get wrong? When what do companies think they're doing to build trust that's actually missing the mark?
Uh, I'm like, I think, I think, part of it, I think, is going back to the language of demonstration, like role modeling
Yeah.
behavior. Do our actions align with our values? And I think sometimes companies get it wrong. Again, not intentionally, but they think, oh, well, we said what we said. Just be happy you have a job, right? But part of that again is your employees are not going to do their best work if they're anxiety filled, right? Or there's a
Yeah.
lot of ambiguity. It says when trust is present, a Gallup poll stated that people are 74% less anxious. I would rather listen. I know whenever I've been anxious at work, I don't get all my work done the best of my ability. Right?
No.
So it just
No.
it's not possible, right?
Right.
So I'm doing it, but that I don't know how well. But so
Yeah.
I think it's important for companies to the show and the tell, right? If I
Yeah.
say as a leader, we promote from within, but you see the last three hires have been outside candidates, what is that going to signal to the
Mhm.
people who've been working hard, right? In those manager training programs, doing
Yes.
the things, they're not going to trust that. What? And you think that that doesn't take a hit, and you just expect people to be like, okay, let me go back and do my work. That erodes trust and it just chips away at it.
Mhm.
And I think that we can do a better job of role modeling more trustworthy behaviors because I think leadership sometimes forgets what it was like to sit on that other side of the table.
All the time. All the
Mhm.
time. It's like they thought they could just hatched out of an egg as a
Yeah.
leader, as an
Mhm.
executive. If every leader and every employee could take away just one message, even though you all need to buy the book, just one message from Talk to Me Nice, what would you want them to understand, Minda? And what should they start doing differently tomorrow?
Yeah, this is good. I think it goes back to asking ourselves that simple yet impactful question: is this going to enhance trust or erode trust? When I'm in
Mm,
that team meeting, when I'm sending out, even if I use AI to help me write it, take a pause and say, is this really going to enhance the relationship or erode? Just because I was direct and had my punctuation correct doesn't mean that it's going to land in the way that I need to, right?
yeah.
And so I want people to understand that trust doesn't erode in the grand acts of betrayal. It's small, quiet moments. And if we can get to those
Mhm.
small, quiet moments, then we have a better workplace because there's no future of work without trust.
Mm, mm. These sound bites. I can't wait. Just can't wait to clip this up and snip it up and put it out there in the universe. Linda, every time you come on my podcast, you don't just give us insight, you give us language for things we've been feeling, but we just couldn't put our fingers on it. We can't name it. And that's what this book does. It doesn't just call out what's broken, it shows us what's possible. Thank you so much for pouring into us and coming back to Career View Mirror.
I want to also acknowledge that I'm so proud of you and congratulations on just always doing making us proud. I'm so happy for you, and I know it's our best. Your best is still ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you, everyone. And I appreciate everyone who's listening and watching today. And if you've seen anything or heard anything that you really enjoyed, make sure you share and like and subscribe, and get the book. Get that book. And we'll see you all later. Thanks for coming to Career View Mirror. Thank you so much for listening to Career View Mirror. If you got value from this episode, please consider leaving a rating and a review for the show on Apple Podcasts, or head on over to Spotify and click 5 stars for our show. We also have a YouTube channel with video versions of our episodes, so subscribe over there for more content. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next episode.